Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is a great data expert on politics and author of the book and Substack Strength in Numbers, G. Elliot Morris. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicswarroom@gmail.com for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, as long as you don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at Politicon.com. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please check out the links to our sponsors, DeleteMe, Spotify, Mint Mobile, and Miracle Made in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because it really helps make this podcast happen. James, the longer this war goes on and around, and Trump really desperately wants to get out, he's violated two incredibly basic precepts. One, you go into something with an objective. It may change, but you know what your end goal is. Trump's end goal has changed daily almost over the last 4 weeks. And two, as Colin Powell said, if you break it, you own it. Trump blatantly violated both. He didn't want to own it. He just wants to bomb and get out. He doesn't want ownership of anything that has any risk. He really, in the beginning, he thought, well, look, what I did in Venezuela wasn't that easy. The problem is there's no Delcy in Tehran. These are evil people, but they're also tough, entrenched people. So, hopefully the good news is that other countries like Turkey and Qatar are starting to mediate rather than the take the money and run gold dust twins, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I think I just would point our readers to a couple of really interesting columns this week. David Ignatius had a really good column in the Washington Post where he said, we have to understand the pain threshold for the Iranians is a lot higher than it is for Trump. And there was a fascinating interview by David French, who I've really grown to like and never met, in the New York Times. He had with retired General Stanley McChrystal. McChrystal was the commander in Afghanistan and Iraq. So he's not what they would call a softie. He made several points about this war. He said, we exaggerated the effect of air power to start with. That he spoke of Iran's toughness and their opposition, which he said we deluded them ourselves into thinking there was a huge opposition there. Well, there were people, 30,000, who were killed demonstrating in the streets, but we don't know who that opposition is. We don't even know. We can't even name the leader of it. So that's a false hope until we know more. And he noted that, like Vietnam, Iran is asymmetrically committed to the outcomes. They don't have the resources of the military we do. They know that. But they can cause a lot of trouble, as we've learned from the Straits of Hormuz. And a couple other points that were really key, I think McChrystal made. He said, for everyone we kill over there, remember, they probably have a brother, a sister, a father, or a mother who are going to be radicalized. So if the final point McChrystal made in this very interesting interview with David French was, if you really enjoy war, enjoy the first part, because that's the easy part. It's going to get a hell of a lot tougher.
So the idea is that we will bomb these people into liking us.
Right.
All right. That's a really just stupid assumption at first. Boy, does it not work. Let's consider, first of all, after World War II, they concluded that the carpet bombing of Germany was ineffective in terms of ending the war. My uncle wanted to sing his flying across many brave people. I'm not at all demeaning that, but indiscriminate. When we would do daytime and we would do more precision targeting. In Japan, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on them in the vote in the Japanese cabinet was 3-3 to surrender. The only reason they surrendered is the emperor had the tie-breaking vote. This is after 2 A-bombs in Russia entering the war against Japan, summer 1945. My point is, when you stop bombing them, the resentment, people getting, families getting blown up, burning, God knows what not, it's going to stick with us forever.
Yeah.
You just cannot bomb people into oblivion. They're just not going to go along with it. And I don't know. He said we did this on his gut. And every war, let's give the American people a little bit of credit here. Every war at one time, it was popular. Vietnam at one time was popular. The first Gulf War was popular the whole time. The Afghanistan War was popular. At a time, even the Iraq War was somewhat popular. This war is like 27% out of the chute.
Right.
People know what's going on here. And the idea of Newt Gingrich's, you talk about the guy at the Waffle House, Newt Gingrich's ideas. We drop 12 thermonuclear bombs and dig a new Strait of Hormuz. This is what passes from the former Speaker of the House. The craziness is not at the gate; it's already broken through. It's in FEMA. It's in it's everywhere you can imagine. It's insane. The war is crazy.
Well, I said earlier, I think Trump now wants to get out. He's going to, of course, claim a big victory, which he didn't achieve. And I think he's left a region that may, in fact, be more dangerous than it was beforehand. But it's what you get. James, I one other topic I want to cover. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments this week on the question of counting mail election ballots that were postmarked on election day or before and arrived up to 5 days late. It's actually a Mississippi law that was passed by Republican legislators and signed by a Republican governor in 2020. I have a couple points about this. One, why the hell is the court taking this up? What business is it of the court? Now, I know the previous circuit. I'm talking not just about the Supreme Court, but the Fifth Circuit. I mean, elections are supposed to be settled in the states. If they do something blatantly, illegal or unconstitutional, then I can see that. But the argument the 6 conservatives made was that, actually, it wasn't the founders, I think it was in 1870, that election day is election day, and that's when you vote. Well, okay, that would eliminate all mail ballots. That would eliminate all early voting. That would change the whole nature of American politics as we've tried to move to a system where more people can vote or it's easier for people to vote. But this court, I think, James, thinks, well, I don't know. It's kind of what the Republicans want. And that's what that 6-member majority may do. Final point. I think they may be wrong. I don't think, limiting mail ballots that come in after mail ballots prior to 2020 were often used more by Republicans. And so I think this is stupid for the courts to be involved. And I don't think it's going to have this huge impact that some people fear.
So there's 2 ways you approach this. You say, Supreme Court is legit branch of government. They might interpret things different than I do. They're capable of making bad decisions. Is human frailty can dictate everything, but they start from some affinity or affection for the law. That's a point of view a lot of people have. Or you can have the point of view to say they're totally corrupt. They have no ethics standards. People are taking them on trips and they're going on Alaska G5s and getting paid in houses and RVs and God knows what else. And they're really nothing more than a political arm of the Republican Party. And they really don't give a shit, but you live in a nation of law, so you got to follow the law. I recommend everybody follow the law. Don't think this shit was thought out. In other words, okay, what is the decision that we can make that most protects corporate and right-wing power. And that's the answer you're going to get every time. And so, in my view, I don't get upset by this because I know who these fucking people are. They're like the county Republican executive committee, not anything more.
Yeah. Well, I know. It's clear the way the outcome of this case. And I think those who calculate, boy, this will be great. It was the RNC, by the way, that brought this case against the Mississippi Republican Party. And I don't think it's going to have any big impact. You just adapt. But I agree with you in the court.
I mean, I think the Democrats should do is because we talk about all these restricted laws, what they did, other restricted laws. I think we should run against it. Okay, so they said you can't do this, run a whole thing. What they don't want you to do is to vote. All of this is being done to stop you from doing something. Run against the whole confluence of this whole judicial and legislative and executive effort at voter suppression and trying to get people not to vote, and tell people that's what they want you to do. Screw them. Do what will piss them off the most. That's the most powerful motivator you have. But if we say, which is this could suppress turnout, this is bad for Democrats, this is just that, turn it around and say what they're trying to do to you and your life and your rights. If you have the final chance to tell them what you think, vote. Up to him on it.
Yep.
Protect your family online with DeleteMe. Jeez, can you imagine? Embarrassment, all the people get stuff hacked every day. It's not just other hackers. It's not just some fat guy in a basement in New Jersey. It's people all over the world trying to break into your stuff.
Yeah. And, DeleteMe makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. It's worse than you think. Data brokers make a profit off your data by commoditizing everything you do online. Now, anyone on the web can buy your private details, social security number, address, contact info, family connections, and more. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and harassment. But now you can protect you and your family's privacy with DeleteMe. Even if you think you have nothing to hide, if you don't take the digital dangers lurking out there seriously, you can put you and your family at risk. Still, as public figures, we always knew we could be targets for scammers and worse. We found out how many Americans are compromised and at the mercy of criminals. We wanted to fight back. With DeleteMe, you'll feel so much better about your security. And more importantly, as family men, we know DeleteMe is something that can help keep our loved ones safe. Join us and start taking steps to protect your privacy with DeleteMe. The New York Times Wirecutter named DeleteMe their top pick for data removal services for a reason. So don't wait. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe now at a special discount for our listeners. You get 20% off your DeleteMe plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/warroom and use the promo code warroom at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/warroom and enter the code warroom at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/warroom, code warroom. The link is in our show notes. James, our guest is G. Elliot Morris, one of the foremost experts on data-driven political analysis, author of the book and Substack, Strength in Numbers, and an expert on polling. I think, Elliot, you make a really important point that a lot of news media, frankly, are missing. As much as we love to relish the fight between Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro and all those MAGA types, the MAGA base is really still with Trump, even on the war. However, the key is, I think you have written this, what he's losing is the soft Republicans and self-identified independents, and he's losing them in droves.
Yeah. Look, about half of Republicans today refuse to call themselves MAGA. The other half, if you ask them, do you identify as MAGA? They'll say yes. And the confusion in the press is that the MAGA half, they believe the MAGA half is what decides elections. But we know from our putting our political science hats on, is those people who are weakly identified with the party, those ones with the really weak attachments to Donald Trump that change their behavior. That's the group you want to focus on. And when you ask those people, how do you feel about Trump? You get much higher defection than you do among the MAGA crowd. Like 75%
You're
of them
getting into
approving.
the war, and what are you getting on affordability? And
if you ask these people how they feel about prices, they will give you, on average, a negative evaluation of the president. If you ask MAGA Republicans, if you ask everybody, Americans are 40 percentage points opposed to Donald Trump's handling of prices.
And Elliot, when you're quoting these figures, you're quoting them from a compilation of data you've looked at as opposed to one or two polls?
The numbers I just gave you on affordability, those come from my survey I publish on my Substack every month. But generally, it's the same response across polls. I mean, right before we recorded, for context, Ipsos just dropped their worst poll for an incumbent president on the economy ever. And so everyone's showing a picture of this bleak for the president.
Elliot, the shutdown may be ending, but you have written, I believe, that the shutdown also, your analysis serves to advantage Democrats. It changes the immigration topic. That surprised me a little because I was beginning to worry that the shutdown was really going to hurt Democrats now when I saw those 3-hour lines in Atlanta and so forth. But tell us your take on this, even though it might end in the next day or two.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote my first analysis of this a couple of weeks ago, and I have not revised it. I think you're right. The hunch that the shutdown could have hurt Democrats, yes, certainly it could have hurt them more over the last couple of days. But Donald Trump yesterday, in a very high-profile news event, refused to accept a compromise from the Democrats and John Thune, the Republican senators, on the shutdown, which signals to the American people that he is the one more to blame for that. So I'd be interesting to see what the polls show over the next couple of days. I have a poll in the field as of recording this, and I think it'll come out hopefully before Friday, and we can see who Americans say they blame more for the shutdown. Just generally, like the president gets blamed for shutdowns because he's the most high-profile figure in American politics, and that was the case in the previous shutdowns as well.
Mm-hmm. James Carville.
So there's, I think, the most overused and underdefined word in American politics is independence. Well, you hear, well, independence moved this much, independence. All right, how does G. Elliot Morris define an independent for polling purposes?
Yeah, I used to work for a pollster, so I take a very polling forward definition here.
Right.
Independents to me are people who, if you ask them twice, first to say that they don't identify with either major party, say they're independent. And if you push them and you say, well, do you typically vote for Democrats or do you typically vote for Republicans or are you an independent? We'll tell you they're an independent the second time. We call this group of people pure pure independents, as opposed to a leaner, an independent who says that they typically vote with the Democrats or the Republicans. We know those people are actually just closeted partisans. I tend to ignore those people.
So at the end, you what about 8 points?
It's about 11 points today, 11? At least in our data. Yeah,
that are actually independent.
Yeah, 1 in 10.
Okay, so another thing that when I look at your poll or anybody's poll, of course, like anybody else, we tried to be a professional. You would say the trial heat doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Shit, I want to know who's ahead. It's kind of an important number to me.
Yeah.
But the approval I look at, but what I really like to look at is the intensity. Not just approve, disapprove, but strong approve, strong disapprove. And it seems like, of course, a slew of polls, I'm sure as you're sure the same thing. There's just a lot more intensity on the anti side than there is on the Trump side. I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. In my survey, we have Donald Trump at a 50% strong disapproval rating. YouGov, I think, also hit 51%, highest ever for president since their tracking began, which was like 2009. And for context, the group of Americans who say they strongly approve of Donald Trump is, I believe, below 20 percentage points in the average survey. So you're looking at like a 2 to 3 to 1 slant in intensity against the president.
So, want to turn over out with this question is, so there's you and I think it's safe to say, and Al, I think the three of us, and as do most people that follow American politics, think the Democrats are going to the House, and frankly, I think they're going to win the Senate too. But for the sake of
Yep.
but there's a ceiling. How big could the Democratic margin get? Now, I'm not asking to predict it, but where does it? An airplane.
You mean in seats or in votes, James?
Let's just talk about votes, raw votes.
Yeah. I wrote or said in a podcast, I can't remember, sometime at this point last year, that the early signals suggested a double-digit Democratic margin in the popular vote for the House wouldn't be out of the question. D plus 12, D plus 13 is what you would predict for this level of dissatisfaction with the president and typical midterm dynamics where people just punish the party in charge. Given how important affordability is to the average person and how poorly they rate Donald Trump, I haven't really changed my mind. Those are really, people feel very intensely anti-incumbent, anti-Trump, and the typical midterm dynamics are for a president to lose pretty soundly. Now, my average expectation, right? I think Democrats will probably win by about 8, but 10 or 11 isn't out of the question.
50, 58, 59 Senate seats.
59 Senate for the Democrats?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to win that many.
I think it would. Now, go ahead, Albert.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this. You have said polls. I mean, we all agree on this, but there are a lot of people that don't, who have a very negative view of polls. I think they say polls have been incorrect much more than they really have been. But you say polls really are essential for a democracy. So elaborate on that for a minute.
Well, let's just take the recent example, the recent news events as an example. Donald Trump has started a foreign overseas war for unknown reasons, or reasons that the American people certainly don't empathize with or share. How would we know how the American people feel about that very consequential decision by their president without surveys? Maybe social media data or like man on the street interviews from CBS News or mainstream news networks. And this, it was not a topic of the last campaign either. So if you're thinking with your small d, lowercase d Democratic hat on, polls are providing a valuable information source for people who care about representing the American people, and it's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some questions of accuracy in elections when the polls on average are off by 1 or 2 points. That matters because American politics is so closely divided. But on most questions, the American public is not 49-51. They're more like 60-40. So an error of 1 or 2 points is not changing how we view the American public overall.
Elliot, I think we all would agree that basically people's opinions of a particular policy or a politician has to do with performance, affordability. If they think it's not affordable, they are negative about it. Same with the war. But for a long time, first the right, now a little bit the left, are focusing on the role that media plays. It was the mainstream before, it's social media now in public opinion. How do you analyze that? Is that exaggerated? Is it changing?
I'm going to put my political science hat on here for a second.
Sure.
We know that public perceptions are downstream of media coverage, capital M, news coverage, to an extent. And also that what anchors say and what agendas media companies set is also a reflection of public opinion, partly. So those arrows are pointing in conflicting directions. If all else being equal, if you take 50% of Americans and you shove them, or 40% of Americans and you shove them into a right-wing information ecosystem, then the suggestion is that those people will be getting a tilted view of the country, of not just the information on an agenda, but which agendas are important themselves. And that does unquestionably, in the political science literature, have an effect on what you believe, who you vote for, and in some cases, your everyday behavior, your consumer patterns. So I don't want to overstate this too much, like the right in American politics would exist without Fox News. But if your question is, at the margin, things really matter. So there's a marginal impact from the diversification of right-wing media offerings and the siloing of the American mind, so to speak. Yeah, that's going to have an effect on our reality.
Right. No King's rally this weekend. Maybe a massive turnout was last time across the country. Any impact?
On, like public protests matter because the media pays attention to them. They don't necessarily change my beliefs on how intensely the American public feels about Donald Trump, because I spend all day looking at numbers on this, and the numbers tend to agree. But what they can be is a forcing mechanism for the media, for people on social media, for the public itself to see that concrete proof of what the numbers are showing. And there are also some theories that that legislators pay more attention to protests when they're larger, so that can have an effect as well. But for the most part, right, if you're seeing 10 million Americans out on the street, you're barely talking about almost 1% of the American public. So you can get 1% of the American public to believe just about anything. Can you get them all out on the street on the same day? No, there's a logistics problem there. But this matters not because the public's about to overthrow Donald Trump's presidency because 2 or 3 million of them are out on the street, but because of the optics. And that's important politically.
James Carville?
So, when you go through a cycle like this, do you see anything, that we know historically in the numbers, a possibility or something that could get the Republicans back on track?
In the House, no. There's just no way. At this point, given everything I know about Donald Trump and where the Republicans are, there's nothing short of a 9/11 style rally in public opinion. So I don't want to count anything out, but in terms of normal politics, our expectation is that the party in power loses about 26 seats in the House on average. When a president is less popular, they tend to lose a little bit more. And when they move policy away from what the average American wants, they tend to lose even more. Now, you tell me, how many things have the Republicans done that have moved policy away from what the average American wants, James? There's just there's nothing really to point to in the bull case here, I think, for the Republicans.
Well, I felt the same way, but you're a lot smarter than me and keep up more. Thank God you agree with me for that.
Well, there you go. There you go.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I hope we can have you back on. The one thing that I don't know if you put it in every poll, but put corruption. Because I think corruption it's going to continue to skyrocket as an issue. Affordability, healthcare costs, put everything in there. But I would just get a really good baseline right now for the corruption issue, because I really see this thing like being overwhelming.
Yeah, we don't ask it in the most important problem tracker. We could add it.
I would.
But we have asked how Americans feel about certain instances of corruption, like the January 6th riots being a large example, the sort of cryptocurrency wheeling and dealing. And by and large, 60-30 or 60-40, 70-30 margins on questions like this, Americans are really broadly opposed. I think you're going to see that be part of the Democratic messaging in the fall.
Elliot, I think James has a really good idea, and I think it's more than just listing as one of the issues. I think, is this administration more corrupt than others? They're all kind of. Do you think Trump is profiting from his public office? Those are legitimate questions.
But they're going to get worse. My point is that the number in a vacuum, you don't know. But if you say that, well, this is what we found in April of this year, and this is what we found in November, and I go, oh, shit. Okay, then I know something about I have contact. But anyways, that's just my idea, because I think that's the coming massive issue in American politics. But
yeah, James,
Well-
people are broadly sortable into left and right, but also into anti-system and sort of pro-system. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of people who are pro-system right now or in general, but you can ask them if they're pro and anti. If they think the average congressperson is working for them or for the ultra rich or for themselves, that sort of thing. And broadly, Americans are anti-system, and corruption, I think, is reminding them that they are anti-system. And right now, who's the systems? Republicans, is Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump has been a product of the system for 60 years or so, and there's just
I'll
really
give you
no
a good
denying
example of that, Elliot. Was with someone last night who had just been back from 4 days in Iowa and says Trump is really underwater in Iowa. They could do very well. He says, there's one thing the Democrats can't do. And I said, what's that? Don't mention Chuck Schumer, because he's almost as underwater as Trump is.
No, he's
Isn't that
worse.
kinda good?
He's worse.
Yeah,
Chuck Schumer
yeah.
is the least popular political figure in American politics in our polling. If you ask Americans if they have a popular opinion of Chuck Schumer, about 25% will say yes. Donald Trump at least has every single Republican on his side for the most part and gets, 45% or so, 40%. Chuck Schumer, I think, is a pretty severe drag on the Democratic Party image, regardless of how you feel about his effectiveness in Washington. People don't like him. Democrats don't like him.
Right.
Republicans don't like him. Independents don't like him.
I share James's view that you've been a terrific guest. We want to have you back. But I have a really important final question. What does the G in G. Elliot Morris stand for?
Well, Al, my mom named me George Elliot Morris and called me Elliot. So there you go.
Well, they're both good names.
Well, I just found George Eliot's old goat ran a pig home yesterday. Simplify your business with Shopify. For a guy like me to, lose his crap all the time and, having to go to a different thing in other places because everything's centralized. This makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Running a small business, you agree, is very rewarding, whether it's a podcast, a newsroom, political consulting firm. We know that firsthand. But no matter what your business is, it's a lot of work and there are a ton of hats to wear. There are payments, inventory monitoring, analytics, client managing, advertising, and more. Soon, your attention gets divided. The to-do list spirals out of control, and just getting organized seems like a full-time job. Finding the right tool to help you and simplify everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. They're used and trusted by household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started, and they can help your business too. With Shopify, you'll be able to get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you by easily creating email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling. Best of all, listen to this. Best of all, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from international shipping to managing inventory to processing returns and beyond. When James was running his firm, he would have done anything to have had Shopify. Since he won almost all those elections, I can't say he would have won a couple more, but he might have won them even bigger. He went from having everything spread out in so many different filing cabinets to having it spread across 50 places on the web. With Shopify, everything is all in one place, making your life easier, your business operations smoother. That way you can focus on the podcast and the clients or ramping up to the next phase. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/warroom. Again, go to shopify.com/warroom. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/warroom. The link is also in our show notes.
start saving with Mint Mobile. Well, if you like money and you like to save money, it's 100% critical.
Yeah.
If you don't like money or you have too much of it, then you don't need it. I mean, what these people do at the price they offer, as far as I can tell, I'm not an expert, it's got to be one of the best deals there is for a cell phone. Staying in touch with people you care about and people you love and things you care about.
If you're one of those people who actually likes your money, unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers like your money too. So if you're tired of spending hundreds on crazy high wireless bills with all kinds of bells and whistles you don't understand, bogus fees and free perks that cost you more in the long run, then a premium wireless plan, a premium wireless plan from Mint Mobile for $15 a month is what you're looking for. Every month you wait is money that could be in your pocket. And we've seen how quick the savings add up with Mint Mobile. So stop overpaying for wireless just because that's how it's always been. Mint exists purely to fix that. We all deserve affordability, and Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. $15 a month for a service. That's incredible. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. It's easy. Bring your own phone and number, activate with eSIM in minutes, and start saving immediately. There are no long-term contracts and no hassle. It's time to ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. With service and a price like that, we strongly recommend you make the switch. Now, we may not be the most tech-savvy people. That's a little bit of an understatement, but James and I could handle it easily. The website is incredibly simple to navigate, and you're going to be able to get your kids and grandkids using it too. Like all of you, they have a lot more important things to spend their money on. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/war room. Again, that's mintmobile.com/war room, and the link is in our show notes. Upfront payment of $45 for a 3-month 5 gigabyte plan is required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customer offer for the first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. So see Mint Mobile for details. Hey, now for the outrage of the week. Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, was slapped down by a federal judge who said, "I'm sorry, you cannot make Pentagon reporters sign what amounts to a loyalty oath in order to cover the Pentagon." So you would think that if you're the defense secretary, you ought to simply obey the law and go back to the way it was before. No, that's not what Pete Hegseth does. Instead of gracefully accepting a court order, Hegseth and his flack, Sean Purnell, a man who also has an unsavory background, said that, okay, if we have to, reporters can come in here to cover the Pentagon, but only if they're officially escorted, including to the bathroom, by one of our people. And the press corridor, where Pentagon reporters have operated for years at the working space, that was shuttered. Now, let me tell you something, Mr. Hegseth. I've been around this town for quite a while. I haven't covered the Pentagon, but I've had reporters who work for me who do. You're not going to win on this one. I think, and sometimes when you shut reporters out like this, they get better stories. There are people who want to get stories out and are more willing when you are playing this kind of outrage. That judge said, in essence, you are violating the First Amendment, which clearly means nothing to you.
Well, yeah, it's a lot more of that coming, let me tell you. I'm going to read something to you from it in its multiple places so you can look at it. This comes from al.com, which I find to be a particularly reputable site. Edit slightly. A former Montgomery resident claimed that his car was, quote, lifted up, unquote, while he was driving and transported 40 miles away into a ditch near a church in a 2005 podcast CNN reported. This gentleman said later in an episode that he was understand, I'm reading it now, I'm not making this shit up, teleported 50 miles away to a Waffle House in Rome, Georgia. I was with my boys one time and I was telling them I was going to go to the Waffle House and get the Waffle House, he said. And I ended up at the Waffle House. This was in Georgia. I ended up at the Waffle House like 50 miles away I was. And they said, where are you? He said, at a Waffle House. Waffle House where? I said, Rome, Georgia. So it's not possible. You just left here. But it was possible. I mean, what he said. This is a true story. This gentleman's name is Greg Phillips. All right? So, Al, you've covered the federal government for a long time. Maybe the most serious guy is the Deputy Secretary of Defense for nuclear proliferation. But where would you put the head of FEMA Response and Recovery Unit, the number one guy in this country in FEMA for hurricane, earthquake, wildfires, is a guy that gets transported to the Waffle House in Rome, Georgia? I'm not shit. Okay, his name is Greg Phillips. Please, people, check me out. And he's been transferred to two places, in a ditch next to a church. That's a very common thing in the South. In the Waffle House, which I'm a big fan of, by the way. I love Waffle House. It's a big thing, too. But I don't know, when I get transported, maybe you transport me to the Waffle House in Bay St. Louis. But I'm not making it up, I swear.
You know, you have raised a contest worthy of the NCAA regionals this week. Let's pit this guy against Brownie. And I have a feeling Brownie would be the favorite going into this. I was with some people last night from Asheville, North Carolina, that had that terrible hurricane, a year and a half ago. And there are people down there whose homes were destroyed. And the federal law says that in a national emergency like that, the federal government will replace, the same value. Not only has FEMA not done anything about it, these people are paying mortgages on a house that was destroyed. If you talk to anyone from Asheville, they will say FEMA's response has been nothing short of a disaster. And after you tell that story, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, Brownie ran a quarter horse association. It was just kind of a misfit. I mean, when you're talking about being transported to a ditch in front of a church,
that's pretty bad.
No, this guy is like, he's not on a different planet than Brownie. They're different, not.
I agree. It's a forfeit.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, you said you want a goddamn man, a ditch in a Waffle House. This guy got hit on the head.
Sleep clean and comfortable with Miracle.
I think these things used to be like a convenience or, to some extent, a somewhat luxury item. I got news for you, man. Now they're a necessity. I mean, it really is. If you look at the amount, and I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to make a political point, but if you look at how hot it's getting out there and how it's going to continue to, this is now a necessity. It's not a luxury.
No, you're right. Because if you wake up sweaty, freezing, or just uncomfortable, take it from James. It's time to upgrade the temperature in your bedroom. And that can make or break your sleep. And that's why you need to switch to Miracle-Made sheets. They're inspired by NASA technology and use silver-infused temperature-regulating fabric to help you sleep perfectly all night long. Sleeping at the right temperature is a critical way to feel rested the next day. And whether it's too hot or too cold, Miracle-Made sheets truly give you maximum comfort in any weather. They make pillowcases and comforters too. Plus, thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle sheets require way less laundry days, and because they stay clean and fresh 3 times longer. So not only is that fewer wash cycles, but it's great for your skin, and hidden bacteria can clog your pores and cause acne. That's just a fact. So sleep cleaner and clearer with Miracle. With no more gross odors, life is a whole lot better for your household. Join us in getting better sleep every night. Not only are Miracle Made sheets smooth, breathable, and ridiculously comfortable, they don't have the steep price tag of other luxury brands. Miracle sheets feel nicer than bed sheets used by some five-star hotels. So it's a vacation when you get into bed. I imagine myself in Italy, but it's your call. Drift off the dream and wake up at the perfect temperature every time you get into bed. Choose Miracle to upgrade your sleep and give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/war room to try Miracle Made sheets today. You're going to save over 40%, and when you use promo code War Room, you'll get an extra 20% off, plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an amazing gift, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there is no risk. That's trymiracle.com/War Room with the code War Room at checkout. Thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. The link is in our show notes. All right, James, now for our great questions from listeners. We lost you for a little bit last week, and there were several questions that came in. I promised them that I would have you, because they're addressed to you, have you address them this week. There's a Dr. Jeffrey in New Albany, Ohio, who wants to know, where's my best time spent volunteering in Ohio? Sherrod Brown, Dr. Amy Acton, or splitting my efforts. My biggest motivation is never to hear that clown, Vivek Ramaswamy, again. Carol, these are all political questions, election questions. Carol in Oak Park, Illinois, said, my husband and I love your show and listen regularly. You recently provided a list of Democratic candidates, urging listeners to contribute ASAP strategically. Do you suggest we focus on one candidate rather than spreading our donations across multiple candidates? And finally, Anthony in Pennsylvania says, I want to donate to Ossoff, Valerico, as well as my Pennsylvania guy, Chris DeLuzio, and others. When I respond to their campaign text, Act Blue is always involved. Is Act Blue a safe platform? Are the threats to investigate Act Blue meant to intimidate and discourage? James, take it away.
So, all right, obviously, there's a lot of questions. I'll tell you what I think. Hard money above everything else. So let's say that you have allocated, you sat down and said it's extraordinary time for you to give $500 a year, but this year we're going to give $1,000. So then you ask them, well, James, should I write one $1,000 check or 10 $100 checks? I mean, it's an oversimplification. My advice is write the $1,000 check. And what I would do is I would pick, and I'm talking about people, donors of this level, $1,000 a cycle, right? I would pick a race, go through where you think money would matter most, and then donate, follow the race. Maybe you can volunteer online, you can write postcards, but I would just pick a House race, a Senate race, a governor's race, and I would follow that, and I would donate, and I would get to know all the people running it, because that's going to increase your political IQ. And that $1,000 to that one House candidate, in central Pennsylvania is going to take you a long way. And then you just, you read what's going on in the race and follow it. That's my advice. Pick one, stick with it.
Yeah. James, Rick in Lima, Ohio says, this is the kind of question we get a lot. I hear and agree Democrats have a steamroller going into the November elections, but I need you to discuss Trump's efforts to derail this, even if we have the votes. Can he stop the momentum or even stop the election? Similar to a question that Chuck in Watertown, South Dakota has asked. I don't think he can call off the elections. He would if he could. And I do agree that he's headed for certain defeat in the Senate or in the House and probably in the Senate too. But he will do everything he can, everything. And it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. And I think it's really important to you leading Democrats, you better get the first team in legally. You're going to win politically. There's no question. There will be plenty of money But they now, unlike 2020, they have a Justice Department, an FBI, and a Homeland Security agency that will try to help them steal this election. And some courts and some circuits you have to worry about. Get a first team in legally, because that's the last protection that we need, because the votes not only are there, they're there in abundance.
So, of course, you couldn't be more right about the legal ramifications of this. And you don't need really great lawyers. You need a lot of really great lawyers because they're going to attack you on multiple fronts. And we know that they have funding that you cannot believe.
Right.
You can imagine what just one Elon Musk would give a, Republican thievery defense fund or whatever. I mean, it's just like unimaginable.
James, you get one. This is a good question. John in Tempe, Arizona. He says, he wants us to explain the jungle system in the California elections, but is it possible that Democrats won't coalesce enough, and with 7 or 8 Democrats in there and only 2 Republicans, could 2 Republicans be in the final?
They call it jungle primary. It used to be it had a Democratic primary and it had rules. Only Democrats would vote, Democrats independents, Republican primaries, and then the 2 would face off. And somebody said, no, well, let's change that. And everybody run at the same time. And the top 2, right, reach 50 to top 2 run off. And the question is, you have 10 candidates. Let's say the Democratic share of the vote in California is 60%, the Republican share is 40%. If 6 Democrats all run it just about the same thing, and one Republican wins 80% of the 40, and the other guy maybe gets 50%, but the 2 Republicans run ahead of where the top Democrat was because you were 8. I hope you follow it, but it's kind of simple math. Then you would have a runoff between 2 Republicans who would only constitute 40% of the vote. The 60% of the vote that voted against them was so fragmented. Now that's possible. It generally does not happen. People become aware who the front runner is and they pair up and things start happening out. But what you have asked is a mathematical possibility, and we know in these crazy ass times there's something possible. It might happen.
Yeah, I think I hope and think there will be pressure on some of the Democrats who are running 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever have you, to get out. Like everybody has a right to run, but this is different. This could be an election of great unintended consequences. Carrie in Youngstown, Ohio, wonders if Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and perhaps Donald Jr. have literally been paid off to engage in war with Iran. Getting personal payoffs is their motive, it seems, for everything. I don't know if you could say they're getting paid off to have war for war in Iran. I do know they're getting paid off. And I think whether it's illegal, it's certainly illicit. Jared Kushner, at the same time he's negotiating for the United States of America in the Middle East, is also trying to cut a deal on it for his private equity firm with the Saudis. Same time. That's a clear conflict of interest. And Donald and Witkoff has done the same thing, and his son. And Donald Jr. and his brother Eric, as James has mentioned, have started a drone company. And there aren't a whole lot of people who think that they're going to be unsuccessful in getting Pentagon contracts. This is the worst, this is the most corrupt administration in history. They make Teapot Dome look like child's play.
Well, this expression is probably true. The oldest business in the world is prostitution. Of course, the second oldest business in the world is war. And started about 2 seconds after war came war profiteering. In my opinion, potential of war profiteering that is currently going on is on a scale that's incomprehensible. It was right before I did the show, somebody were making $1 billion trades on energy markets.
Mhm.
And miraculously, people were buying, 400,000, whatever shares of Chevron 4 days before Venezuela. And if there is a special place in hell for anybody, that special place should be relegated to war profiteers. Now, I'll be very clear. Some people, Henry Ford changed the River Rouge plant and made tanks, and the government paid for the tanks, and that's fine. I mean, there's a certain amount of money. Grumman people make such a certain amount of money, and everybody does. That's part of the way we do things. But the excessive profiteering in the use of knowledge and intelligence to make money, every ramification of this, I think, requires a special congressional committee with broad powers of subpoena and investigation, because I think there's a good chance that these wars are just sitting there so people can make money. But I hope that the Democrats win the House and the Senate, and I hope to put my theory to test.
Yeah. James Ed in El Sobrante, California. This is a good question. They all are, but this is one that's different. Do you think after the midterm victories, the Democrats in the House will vote to award civil damages to the families of Renee Good and Alex Freddie, who were murdered in Minneapolis, like the Republicans did for Ashley Babbitt's family?
Probably.
Yeah.
I can't tell you if it was like. By the way, I just noticed the JFK Profile and Courage Award. You own that thing. You know who got it this year?
Jerome Powell.
But this year I think they gave it to the people of Minneapolis.
They did. They gave it. It was for both. I hope I'm not not breaking news on Jerome Powell, but it was for both. I'm sorry, it was, and I think it's so deserving.
Right.
It's so they really.
I mean, it was just a civic statement that the city made,
Right.
And I'm sure
that given what they did, and it was just such a tragedy, and it's just an ongoing tragedy, and
Yeah.
all the things he could do right or wrong, that wouldn't. It's probably something they shouldn't do.
It's really such an important recognition. These people did they were so courageous, and they stood up. Talking about standing up or talking truth to power, they did it. James David in Sunrise, Arizona says, if Congress were to do its job, impeach, hold a trial, convict, and remove Trump from office, and J.D. Vance becomes the president, and we'd be better off. David, I'm one favor. I think you're a great listener. I think you're a great citizen. Just strike the word impeachment from your vocabulary. Not that it's deserving. It's a distraction right now. It's what he wants to talk about. And you want to talk about corruption. You want to talk about affordability. You want to talk about an illegal war. But, don't talk about impeachment. It's not going to happen to start with. And secondly, it really is a distraction.
So, you're right. Albert's right. We're not going to talk about impeachment. What I want to talk about is the possibility of resignation. Because he doesn't know how much his life is getting ready to change post-November.
Right.
And when he gets hit with that, it just like, the force that it hits with, the culture changes. No one wants to, remember after we lost in 94, Gingrich wouldn't take Clinton's phone call.
Yeah.
Now, it happened, of course, because it was Gingrich versus Clinton. It was Ali versus Butterbean, okay? But his power, he'll still be president. His power is going to just ebb out. Foreign leaders, because this guy's got 2 years to go. He's lost the whole public opinion. He's lost the whole Senate. He's lost the House. The lobbyists are going to start cutting deals on the other side. You've seen this 1,000 times before. Yep. The guest list for every cocktail party, for everything is going to change. The Christmas party's coming up. And he's just going to see that seeping out, and takes the Chancellor of Germany 72 hours to call him back. And I think the guy is just soft. And it's horrible when you get hit like he's going to get hit. I think he just gets J.D. Vance to pardon him. And I think there's a good chance he just says, shit, I'll just walk away. It ain't worth it. I thought best I can do. I don't think he's tough enough to tough this out.
Well, if he does that, he's going to get some kind of a deal from Vance to make sure that there's no prosecutions. But anyway.
I don't know. All of that is, I guess it's negotiable. But I don't think he's going to, after being where he is, I don't think he's physically or mentally capable of doing it, of sticking it out. I just think he's fat, lazy, and deteriorating. And to the extent that he can see where he is, he might just walk away. Walk away, Renee.
Donald, we hardly knew you, but we sure as hell won't miss you.
Listen, maybe I'm crazy.
We love those questions. They are so good. And if we didn't get to your question this week, send it in again. As we showed with the first questions for James this week, we keep those questions. And if we didn't get to it, we'll try to get to it next week. Please keep them coming. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd check out the links to our sponsors, DeleteMe, Shopify, Mint Mobile, and Miracle Made in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You also can find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.